Hi, I'm Christian Peter from Dark Horse Commercial, and today we're going to be talking about how to sell for top dollar fast. And more specifically, we're talking about the 7 mistakes that sellers make that kill value. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the same mistakes made over and over again, so I'd like to help you put top dollar in your pocket by avoiding these common pitfalls. So let's talk about underpricing or overpricing. Now, a lot has changed over the years. In the last 25 years, we've seen more technological changes than we've seen in the last probably 1,000 years. The point of it is the way we do business is very different than it was years ago. So there's an old method, right? An old way of thinking about just put the property for a price up here, and the people will come in with an offer here, and we'll somewhere meet in the middle, right? And it makes sense logically. And that worked in the pre-technology age. Before, you would just way back in the day, you'd slap a sign outside, maybe put the property in the newspaper, and then, you invite offers. But the way people shop for buildings, shop for real estate has changed. Here's what I mean. Let's say you go on to the world's most popular commercial real estate site, LoopNet. Okay. Let's say you go there looking for a property. The very first thing they ask you to do is put in a price range. Now, let's say for argument's sake, you have a building that you want to sell and you want to put 7.2 in your pocket, right? 7.2 million. Now, a lot of people would say, well, let's just put it on the market for 8.2 and maybe we'll get offers, somewhere in between that 7 and 8 million, and we'll go from there. It's a common misconception, but the problem is, if you really think about it, if there's a buyer out there and they can afford 7.2 million, maybe they'll only put 7.5. Maybe they'll put their search from 6.5 to 7.5. Maybe they'll put their search a little tighter from 7 to 7.5. The point is, if you have it above 8 million, above that eight, maybe they're searching for between 7 and 8 million. If you have it above and beyond that, guess what? It's like a tree that falls in the woods and no one hears it. Did it even fall? So a common misconception in today's day and age is that you just put it up at a high price. Whereas if you're searching digitally, it will not be seen by a lot of buyers. I have seen this over and over again. If we, were to adjust the pricing on a property, you drop it down just a little bit, and next thing you know, the market comes alive. Why? Because it now gets within a range of where people are actually looking for that particular product. Okay. Now, underpricing. A lot of people are afraid of underpricing. I know I would be, right? If no one wants to leave money on the table, but at the end of the day, it is absolutely impossible to underprice a property on the open market. Okay. You can underprice a property by selling your property off market to your neighbor. You know why? Because unless the market has gotten a chance to compete for your property, right, you don't know what the real value is. If you just sell to your neighbor Bob and you say, "Hey Bob, I'll sell this building for 3 million." Okay, fine, I'll give you 2.8. Okay, fine, end of story, right? There's a very good chance that you might underprice it. It's only when we take a property and we put it on the open market and expose it to the largest audience possible that we're able to maximize the value to the seller. So if you think about it, and this is something that we've seen, it's kind of a rule of thumb, and it's not a perfect science, but if you think about the concept, it's basically anything over 10% above the strike price, anything that's over that, if you're putting your building on the market, you're not going to see very many offers. Okay. You get it from within 5 to 10% above that sale price or strike price, as we call it. Okay. You're going to start getting an offer here, an offer there, right? If you put it in for 0 to 5% above strike price, that's where you get multiple offers. And I'll tell you why. I mentioned LoopNet a moment ago. Imagine you go into LoopNet, and I'm sure those of you that have ever combed through it or you get your alerts from there, you see there's a lot of garbage properties or a lot of properties that the pricing is not commensurate with the value. Let's put it diplomatically. But if you look at those properties and you see, overpriced, 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 and the next thing you know, when you see one that's actually priced well, you jump right on it. Okay. Just as as you would react the same, other buyers react similarly. Okay. And that's how we get what I call a buying frenzy. I'm sure if any of you have ever used eBay or any other auction site or anything, you've overpaid for something because you had what we call FOMO, fear of missing out. So if you've ever had fear of missing out for anything, I know I have overpaid for things because I had fear of missing out. That is how you get the highest dollar for your property by creating a competitive bidding environment and getting people almost like an auction type mentality to bid the price of the property up. If it's on an open market and it's visible to absolutely everybody, there's no way that you're going to underprice your property. It's always going to be bid up. Why? Because in a market like Miami, there are thousands of buyers out there, all willing to buy it as long as it's at the right price. Okay, so let's talk about other things that kill value. Deferred maintenance. Okay, the reality of sales of warehouses is very simple. You're usually going to do one, two, sometimes three inspections. You're going to have a physical inspection, oftentimes an environmental inspection, and sometimes you're going to have an appraisal, right? So what's going to wind up happening is the person that does the physical inspection, let's just talk about that one for now. The physical inspection is done by somebody, and they're going to go around and they're going to look and they're going to see that gutter that isn't, that's leaking. They're going to see the roof that has some bubbles in the tar paper, and that maybe it's got some bellies in it. They're going to see the cracks in the pavement. They're going to see if you have some settling issues in the concrete block, or they're going to see if your electrical panel's overloaded, what have you. The point of all of this is, a lot of building owners, they kind of ignore problems with the buildings because, at the end of the day, the money's coming on the first. As long as it's not causing a serious issue and no tenants calling you about it, it's not that big a deal. Because realistically, with warehouses, and I'm a warehouse owner as well, we have one job: keep the roof dry and the walls in order, and that's pretty much it. It's not like other types of properties. From a management and a maintenance standpoint, relative to other property types, warehouses are quite easy. But if you have deferred maintenance and you find a buyer, chances are they're going to do a physical inspection. The very first thing they're going to do is mark all those things that you kind of know you need to be doing. I got to take care of this. Yeah, I got to take care of that. They're going to make a list of those and they're going to present it to the buyer and take a guess whether or not the buyer is going to overestimate or underestimate the cost of those repairs. So what I would recommend is, if you know there's things, I'm not saying search for them, but if you know there's things that need to be taken care of, take care of them before you get the property under contract. Start today. Even if you don't plan on selling for 6 months or a year or 2 years, start taking care of those today. Your future self will thank you. Unpermitted structures. Here in Miami, ever since the unfortunate tragedy in Surfside, a lot of the cities have started getting more strict with structural issues and so forth. In fact, I just went through a 40-year inspection with one of my properties, and I was amazed at how deep they're going into it now. There's a lot more attention on both structural as well as unpermitted structures. Things that were just years ago, no one would mind. That mezzanine, that you got some office up there, or you got some storage area, that type of thing. You have to be very, very careful of unpermitted structures. In fact, in the 2008 to 2012 era, when there weren't a lot of building permits out there, a lot of cities, I know the city of Miami was going around and getting everything, all their microfiche, and getting it all the plans all digitized, so they know what is in your property, and they'll know if there's any changes or if there's any additions and so forth. So if there is anything unpermitted, either get it permitted or get it to the point where it's not going to cause a negative effect, because they will pull a permit, and I have seen deals fall apart. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to a building owner, and he knew he had illegal mezzanines, and he knew he had some things, and guess what? They turned around, and unfortunately the deal fell apart because the people were nervous, So the cities, whereas they used to let things slide in the past, unpermitted structures and so forth, they don't do that any longer. So be careful of that. And saying, well, that's the way I bought it, or it's been that way for 20 or 30 or 40 years, unfortunately doesn't cut it in the eyes of a buyer. Bad lease structures or short remaining term. I'm a big fan of short remaining term. Unless someone is a credit tenant, if they're they're an Amazon, they're a Google, they're a big FedEx, those types of tenants. I'm a big fan, especially for small bay warehouses, of short remaining term. Why? It allows the landlord or the new landlord to go in there and adjust the rents to market rate slowly, and get the value of the building up for themselves. Let's talk about bad lease structures. So, oftentimes in Miami, a lot of owners have things that are gross. I should say, they have leases that are in gross format. They have industrial gross. One thing that I did over the years, that I would recommend, is get your buildings into a triple net lease structure. Why? Because the very first thing an investor is going to do is look at what the taxes are today, and then if you go to miami-dade.gov, you can actually enter into there what you're selling your building for and what the new taxes will be. And oftentimes they're looking at that, and if it's going to be a huge jump, it can kill the return on the deal, and it can make the deal a no-go. Like I mentioned before, investors are only concerned with the return on their investment. Okay. So but rather, on the other hand, if you were to get your gross lease converted over to a triple net lease, or your industrial gross lease converted over to triple net, it would solve that problem out of the gate. Don't forget, property taxes are the most expensive part of a property. So in terms of the operating expenses, they are the largest portion of the operating expenses. So a big swing in the property taxes can kill the deal. So and all it would take, it would be an addendum, to your lease, nothing more than stipulating that the property taxes, the insurance, and the common area maintenance is going to be that cost will be borne by the tenant. You could switch it over. Instead, you could explain to them that, listen, instead of doing an increase this year in the base rent, all you're going to be doing is transferring those triple net expenses over, if so long as they're not a huge chunk on a per square foot basis. Or maybe you transfer a little now and then a little bit next year, that type of thing. But having a good lease structure in place when you do go to sell, preferably triple net. I know it's not super common, but it would be beneficial. They will do it. I used to not believe that they would do it until I did it. I did it for 4 tenants on one property, and no one even batted an eye. Incomplete or sloppy records. One thing I have seen over and over and over again is a lot of folks have owned property since before the digital age, since maybe the 80s or even 70s and 90s, before everything was on a spreadsheet or everything was saved in the cloud. And I totally understand that. One thing to be careful of is when you have incomplete records. Okay, whenever you have any information that is not in today's format, more or less, what people will do is it'll start opening the seed of doubt in someone's mind. If you have sloppy records that, maybe the landlord has been paying certain expenses out of their pocket and so forth, okay? Just remember, whenever anyone doesn't know whether they can depend on the information you're giving them, they're absolutely going to overestimate it, and it will cost you money. Okay. Remember that the more for every dollar for every dollar, let's say at an 8 cap, for every dollar that you increase your NOI, okay, it's $12.50 in value. And we'll get into the math later, but it's just because 100 divided by 0.08 is 12.5. The point of it is, when you look at the impact that $1 of NOI changes the value of the property, it makes for a huge bit. A huge difference in value. So we want to make sure all your records are as accurate and dependable as possible, because you don't want people to start underwriting the property with bigger expenses than you're actually incurring. So make sure it could just be on a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could just be on a simple spreadsheet, but just so long as the people can look at it, believe in it, have faith in the numbers. Because if they don't believe in it, if they're either incomplete or sloppy, what's going to happen is they're going to overestimate the cost it takes to run the building, which you're already doing. So make sure you get that in line. Poor marketing exposure. One of the mistakes that I've seen that killed value is not getting it in front of enough people, number one, and not getting your building in front of the right people. So when you have identified the right people, and when you know how to get in front of them, most importantly, know what to say and know how to say it, then you're going to be able to maximize the value. And I can't tell you how many times I'll see something and it'll be on LoopNet, let's say, and either the description will be poorly written, there won't be any pictures, there won't be any drawings, there won't be any financials, and it's a shame because remember, whenever anyone doubts anything about a property, what they do is rather than being aggressive, they become more conservative and they lower the value of what they're willing to pay. Zoning or legal issues left unaddressed. Okay, this is similar to kind of like deferred maintenance and unpermitted structures. The zoning and legal issues. If you know you have something, okay, I promise you, in today's day and age, it will come up at closing. So in case it's been a while since you've been through a closing, the process is basically they go to get title insurance, and when they would go to get the title insurance, they get title search, and during that title search, they're going to find anything, any sort of lien, any sort of encumbrance, any sort of easement on the property, and if anything comes up that isn't easily solvable, a line item on a closing statement, it's going to delay your closing. So if you know that you might have a tenant in place that maybe doesn't have their occupancy license, or if you have a mechanics lien, heaven forbid, some contractor, put a lien on your property. Or one thing I've had to deal with is I've had tenants move out and they stiff me with the water bill. I had to pay a water bill not too long ago from a tenant from years back, and they tack on interest. So just know, if you have anything outstanding currently, take care of it before the property goes under contract. Why? Because if the property goes under contract and they start seeing all these issues come up, then again, you don't want them sowing seeds of doubt inside their mind. Also, you want to make sure that you can transfer the property over with a clean title, free of liens, encumbrances, and other sorts of items in a timely fashion. Because if they feel like they can't close in a timely fashion, maybe they're a 1031 exchange buyer and they need to get it done by a certain time. If they feel like they can't get it done, maybe they'll while they're in their inspection period, during their due diligence period, they'll kill the contract. Okay, so it's very, very important to try to handle these things as much as possible beforehand. And then finally, one of the biggest mistakes that kills value is choosing the wrong broker. You have one chance to make a first impression. One chance. So putting the property on the market with the right person that knows what to say, knows how to say it, and puts it in the right places so you get the widest audience possible, so you can get the most amount of dollars in your pocket as possible. Or worse yet, going solo. I know in today's day and age, it seems very simple to just take a picture of the property, write a description, and you put it on LoopNet, maybe MLS, CoStar, right? The process seems very simple, but what I want to impress is it's not what us brokers do, it's how we do it. There's a science, there's an art, as well as identifying on an email list over the years and years and years who the likely buyers are. So be very, very careful. A lot of people say, well, I want to save 3 or 4 or 5 or 6%, right? And I can understand the wanting to maximize the amount of money possible, but a good broker will absolutely get you 6% more than the average owner could on their own. That's a guarantee if you get a good broker who knows what they're doing. So thanks for tuning into this section of the 7 mistakes that kill value. In the next section, we're going to be handling how to maximize value with strategic preparation. So look forward to seeing you in the next video, and thanks for tuning in, and hopefully this gave you some ideas. And if you're looking to get an opinion of value on your property, feel free to come by and drop by at www.darkhorse-commercial.com. Again, darkhorse-commercial.com. And right on the landing page, it says request evaluation. Go ahead and click, put your name and number in there. It's no pressure. It's completely free of charge, just to give you an idea of what your building is worth in today's market. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.